When you're not in the system, they take you out. So I'm thinking, you know, bosses are flipping all the time now. The mafia bosses, you hear that all the time. And
did you ever have people stealing from you?
of course, Al Capone, John Gotti, the most notorious killer in the world, would have people steal from them. There's just people that will do it, and you will, yes. You know, I could tell stories where guys have gotten killed, you know, not by me, along just for stealing, but, you know, that have been severely beaten. It does happen. And it does, you know, like I said, you will have guys do that. That's why they usually make an example out of them. And look what happened to him. You know, he got his fingers chopped off because he stole. So the next guy's not going to do it, you know? But yeah, that will happen.
Yeah, so what's one of the craziest stories you've got, or laugh out loud moments?
I mean, my whole life was crazy stories. I mean, like, you know.
What about like a negotiation?
Yeah, you know, like blowing $70,000 when I was 16 years old as a young kid. You know, going to prison for coming back with my uncle at 16 years old with 5 kilos of cocaine in the car. You know, he was bringing them back. You know. Yeah. You know, so my whole life was just a crazy, you know, who would have ever thought I would, you know, my father's a fruit guy and a produce guy. I'm going to be the boss of the most powerful crime family outside of New York, you know. And, you know, so my whole life, you know, the amounts of money that I made, insane amounts of money, the amounts of violence that I got into facing a death penalty case. So my whole life is considered, you know, like a crazy lifestyle. You know, even up to this day. I mean, it's just, you know, it's in a good way, you know, but it's still it's just my life. I think it's going to be like that until the day I die. Just, you know, crazy stuff is going to come my way for whatever reason.
And so then, like, let's walk through, like, what was the moment that you knew, like, that life was over and that you needed to start to, like, look forward to the next chapter?
So I knew that life was over when I got involved in murder in 2003. And so I knew at that moment it was over, because going to sleep at night when I'm making millions of dollars and having no risk was easy. I sleep like a baby. Even after murder, you sleep like a baby. But the difference is you always have that thought, is tomorrow going to be the last day I ever wake up and I'm going to see freedom? Because when you get caught with murder, like I said, you go to jail for the rest of your life. And what changed me was I had kids. I had a son and 2 daughters. I was married. I had a really good life. I had all kinds of businesses. I had legitimate businesses that I was involved in, $100 real estate deals, you know, $100 million real estate deals, $100 million tow truck, tire business. I was getting involved into some major, because of the networking. And we had all the Costco's. If you had a product, we could get you into 250 Costco's. I mean, we had all the ATMs. We had the garbage. We were getting back into the garbage and the fish business and the construction, and these are all legitimate. Yeah. So I knew once the murder happened, it was a life changer, because, you know, once you do that, now you have to always be around that and maybe do it again, and you're dealing with now the rest of your life in prison. So I knew it was over then. I came home from prison in 2008, and I kind of got lucky. I beat a case. You know, I picked up 3 indictments, got 3 to 3.5 in the state, 29 months in the feds. As I'm doing the time, I get indicted with the state case. I go to trial and I beat it. When I come home in 2008, I thought I was never going to get out. I did. I got out in 2008. And it was like, you know, that's all I want to do. I want to be around my kids. I had, you know, my family, making legitimate money, and pretty much stay away from that. But I ended up getting indicted in 2010 for the murder racketeering case. And now I had already wanted to get out of the life and you know, be with my family, but now this is just the final straw. That was
that the murder of Bruno?
That was the murder of
Bruno.
So
from 2003
to 2010 is when I got indicted in 2010 for that murder.
In a racketeering case. From 7 years ago.
Right.
So you get indicted for that, and then I guess it was through that process that you decided you were to become an informant. And
yeah, I don't call it an informant. I became a government witness. Informant is someone that was out there wearing wires and acting as a spy to tell the government. I considered what mine was. After I got indicted, I was shown evidence. I had dozens of witnesses against me, 4 of them that could actually were involved in the murder. My boss from New York, Artie Nagro, put me around a man that was a known informant. He was an informant, informing on guys, acting as a
Wearing
spy,
wires, all that.
wearing
Yeah,
wires.
okay.
And I asked permission to kill him. I mean, this guy knows stuff that could put me in jail for the rest of my life. They wouldn't give me permission. Artie didn't give me permission. So when I went to prison, we had all these witnesses. We had the 4 guys that could put us directly with the murder. It was a death penalty case. And then to cap it all off, my lawyer from New York comes up and says the bosses in New York are worried sick. I said, what are they worried about? They said Artie, who was the boss, Artie Nigro, he's not in the system. What that means is that he made a deal. He cooperated. When you're not in the system, they take you out. So I'm thinking, bosses are flipping all the time now. The mafia bosses, you hear that all the time. And so I said, if they're worried, what should I be? I'm second on the indictment looking at a death penalty case. He said, well, let's just wait and see what happens. And so that was the last straw for me. I said, fuck this. I'm going to make a deal. And, and I looked and I tried to make the deal with I had 3 crew members that were from Springfield faction of the Genovese crime family. I sent word for them a month and a half before I even made any deal. And this is all in public newspapers. It's all in interviews with lawyers that represented them, that I reached out to them a month, which is stupid on my part. But I just said, hey, listen, if I'm going to go that route, I'll tell these guys up front, this is what I'm going to do, and you should do it with me. And so that's what I did, and that was the last straw, and that's how I got out of it.
And then who'd you have to give up, or what'd you have to give up to?
So I ended up having to, once you go that route, you have to tell your criminal history, crime history, like we're talking about now.
Yeah. So all the things you're involved
in. But
with.
especially murder.
Yeah.
And I was involved in multiple murder plots, murder conspiracies, murders, and so you have to talk about all that. And and whoever doesn't cooperate, which there was dozens of guys that cooperated. The guy I told you, Jimmy Santinello, that owned the strip clubs, worth tens of millions of dollars on the list. He was an informant, another informant since the 80s, telling on all of us. So I mean,
he's the guy that owned the
and he owned the strip
league.
club, So I mean, like once you look at that, and you just want to look out for your family. Yeah. And again, who comes first in your life? If you have kids, anybody that says they can make a decision where they can be there back with their family and their kids, and they don't do that, you got to have something wrong with you. So they gave me that option, but now I want to offer that same option to my 3 friends. It was only 3 guys in my area that got in trouble.
So you get them.
So I want them to do the same thing I'm doing. They got kids. If you ask them their kids, would you want your daddy home?
Yeah.
And they say, yeah. Well, then tell your daddy to do what I'm doing, and you have a daddy home with you. All they had to do was do what I did. They were given the opportunity to do that. What in your right mind is the mafia, guys in New York that they don't even know, more important than their kids? Because in my case, they're not. Nobody is.
So they came along with you?
They didn't.
Oh, they didn't?
Oh, I mean, a lot of guys, like I said,
they chose not to.
Those 3 guys chose not to.
What happened to them?
2 of them are in jail for life, and the other one got 25 years. And he beat the murders, and he still got 25 years. So, it just goes to show you, it's like, you're fighting against a machine that you can't win, especially us. We had 4 direct witnesses to the murder.
And so, obviously, you're out now. You're public about this. I think you kind of mentioned earlier, you're not witness protection. You feel it's safe just because of it's not worth it to the other guys.
The other guys don't exist no more like they did. So in my area, Springfield area, there is no mafia. You got internet. Today what you got is the internet mafia.
Okay.
You got guys that weren't part of the mafia, but are telling stories that they were like Al Capone, and John Gotti, that they were part of the mafia. And that's what you got today. You got internet mafia, and which, nobody's afraid of them because we all know that they were bullshitters and nobodies, but the world doesn't know it. So that's why I'm saying you got internet mafia. You can tell a story today. We know you're a bullshitter, but there's 7 billion people in the world that are going to be like, oh my God, did you hear this? This guy was that. No, he wasn't. He's lying. But that's what you got today. So in Springfield area, there is no mafia. Connecticut, no mafia. You do have there's 3 old guys in Springfield that are made guys, right? And there's a bunch of informants. You got like this one kid, Manzi kid, right? You go ask Frankie Pugliano, the Puglianos, what they think of the Manzi kid, and they'll tell you he's an informant. So his father told him to be an informant. His father's from Italy. He says, and this is how you have to do it in America. You have to work with the police and the prosecutors. Al Bruno was an informant. He was an informant. Al Bruno was an informant. If you ask 100 guys, 100 street guys, 100 gangsters, was Al Bruno considered a rat or an informant? They'll say 100%. Now, why is Al Bruno dead? He's not dead because of me. I didn't give the order. Who gave the order? Who's the bosses? The Genovese family. So the Genovese family bosses gave the order to kill a man. For what? For no reason? Or what? Because he was an informant. So that's why Al Bruno got killed. So
you say there's no mafia there, but they're still there, right? Is it just
not in Springfield? So when
who's running these business? Like they're not. The
all right. So when you say mafia, you want
or the
a
people
made
who were
men.
involved.
So you're talking made men.
Yeah.
All right. So there's no made men. You got 3 old men. One guy's like 101, and he's been on the shelf. He's been on the shelf since the 70s. I mean, this guy was like, very weak. And when it came to mafia, nice guy.
So it was after you went down, a lot of it.
Yeah. So when I had the biggest crew,
Yeah.
I had the most violent crew. And when I went down with me, plus there was like I said, dozens of, all the informants got exposed. All these guys that own bars and restaurants and strip clubs and guys who were bookmakers on the street, they were all telling on us. There was dozens and dozens of guys telling. And that's how it works. Like it works like that in the legitimate world, where, people are looking to rise up and get ahead and gain connections and, inform on certain things.
Yep.
It works like that in New York City. It works like that in Philadelphia. They had guys come on, what percentage of, and this is coming from a mob boss. He said, what percentage of, and this is now recently, this was last year. He said, what percentage of the mafia today are informants? He said 98%. How are you supposed to run a business and be successful on the streets when 90% of the people are trying to put you in prison? Why? They want your business. They want if you got a pretty wife or pretty girlfriend, if you have successful, businesses that they want it all. They want it.